Hey, we are ready to go. Hard to believe that we're all here today. Love it. Um, our topic today is self care made simple. Is that right? Did I have that
Yep,
set up
that's right.
properly? And wow, we're going to be getting into that in just a moment. We're going to start with introductions first. Cass, jump in for us.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cass J. Henry. I'm an abundance coach working out of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and I'm going to be short and sweet today. My job is to assist clients in changing their perspective from one of lack to one of an abundance in order to achieve a more harmonious balance in life. That's really what I do. So back to you, Steve.
Okay, and it's at cassjhenry.com, right? Um,
That's right.
yeah, good. Shelly Ann, your turn.
Hi, good day, everyone. I am Shelly Ann Edwards Barron from Trinidad and Tobago, and I am a gratitude guide and habit coach. And what I get to do, which is lots of joy for me, is to help others find joy in their process. And I'm putting it that way because what happens when we hit 40 is that I think the panic sets in because we're feeling like time is running out and we want to accomplish so much. So we add and add and add on tasks. And what happens is that we end up feeling burnt out and overwhelmed. And so, what I do is to help my clients sort through that burnout feeling and overwhelm using the process of the gratitude strategy. And we begin with saying it right, which is working through the self talk. Then we look at saying it loud, which is making gratitude tangible. And then finally, we look at saying it always, which is making gratitude a daily habit. And that daily habit of gratitude sets the foundation for other habits that help them achieve their goals with joy. And that's the main thing that I work with. We want to accomplish our goals, but we don't want to feel like if we're burning the candle at both ends to get that done. And if gratitude and all of that sounds interesting to you, you can check out my weekly program, Getting It Done with Gratitude, on YouTube, and reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Facebook or Instagram. I would love to chat with you about gratitude. I can talk about it all day, every day.
So if I hire you, Shelly Ann, you can work with me on that hitting 40 thing.
Oh yes, yes. So we in your case it might be a retrospective, but we can still work on it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Hey, everybody. My name is Steve, and I'm known by many online as the WordPress Wizard or the Coach's Coach. I'm a multi niched coaching practitioner. I'm a published author, a digital content creator, an online presence consultant, a business success guide, and a personal development mentor. I work with coaches and other professionals who want to start or expand their online presence. I help them get unstuck in their personal and business lives so they can move forward with their own journey of success. I earn my entire income online, helping other people do the same, and you can find me at stephenbhenry.com. And as I often say, the time to hire your guide is before you get lost in the woods. So here we are, and I'm just going to throw in just a little bit of kind of a spoiler, I guess. Um, the uh, I want everybody to be aware and watching for the new um, uh, OCIC network website, which is coming soon. Just to give you a heads up. Um, and there's some good things happening, so it'll be worth looking at. So we're talking about self care made simple, and we often forget how important self care is. That we want to be, um, it's more than just taking care of ourselves. It sounds like those equate, but we have to understand how it all goes together, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm reminded of a thing that I've shared with people many times. The idea that if you're a mother, and I don't know too much about that, but I've certainly had kids, and You know, seen mothers with kids, and there's nothing better. And so you want to put your kids first, and you want to do for the kids always. And we see that, happening. But sometimes you must take care of yourself first. You must look at it from that perspective. And the best example of that is on an airplane. If you're flying with one of your children beside you and something happens and the oxygen masks fall down from those little ceiling compartments and they're hanging there, and your tendency is to grab one and get it on your kid first because you're a mother, you're looking out for your kid. That's your feeling, that's your tendency. And that's a specific example of when you need to grab that mask and put it on yourself first so that you're able to keep going to get the second one and put it onto the kid. Because if you don't put one on yourself first, well, you're busy fumbling with the one that you're trying to get on your child. The oxygen's gone. You may faint. You may be unconscious, and you don't get it on your kid, and so you failed, both of you. So sometimes it's so important to take care of yourself first. And that's where self-care comes in on an ongoing basis. We're coaches. We help people,
Mm-hmm.
but we cannot help people if we don't help ourselves first to be
Yeah,
there.
I
You
want to
can't.
jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I guess Cass as well. For me, what I held on to most in the title was the made simple part of the self-care made simple, because I feel like sometimes we get it into our heads that self-care has to be flamboyant and excessive. And so if I don't get mani-pedis every month or every 2 weeks, then I'm not really into self-care. And I really wanted to look into that aspect of making self-care manageable, accessible, sustaining, and really possible for people who think, I don't have a lot of money, so I really can't care for myself. I think making it manageable is really something to look into.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Self care is about something that rejuvenates you. It either offers you rest or it offers you energy, and it could be as simple as taking a walk. You could
Hmm.
um, build a blanket fort in your living room. You don't have to purchase anything for this. You
Hmm.
could go have dinner with a friend. You could go get a mani penny. Things that cost money, but you don't have to. Something as simple as taking 2 minutes at your desk, doing some deep breathing, closing your eyes, letting your thoughts go, and just being away from everything in that
Hmm.
little moment there. That's part of self care. Um, Self care can also, though, it can be something that you say, you know what, I've saved up, I've worked really hard, I deserve a week in Cuba, and I'm going to go do that. That can be part of self care too. So it's a full spectrum.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
What
a really
what
wide
you're
range.
Yeah, what you're hitting on there is really key. That self care isn't just physical. My example was physical, of course, but it was only to make the point that sometimes you have to look inward. But self care is emotional and mental. It's about mindset.
Hmm.
Cass, you just used the word spectrum. It covers the whole spectrum of things, and it's so important. It's little things, but they add up. That vacation to Cuba might be a big thing. It may be a big piece of your budget. It may be a whole new experience for you. It isn't the vacation to Cuba that's the self-care. It's how that lets you relax and regenerate that is the self-care. And all of the wonderful things that you're going to see as you tour the island and have a new experience, they may be separate from the self-care portion of it, that's there for your mindset, for your approach to other things. Everything
Yeah.
we've covered before is
That's interesting in the sense of, sometimes we do things under the guise of self-care, but are they really self-care? Because it might seem that way because other people are doing it for self-care, but does it work for us to help us relax and rejuvenate and be filled with the energy? And I feel like when I did I actually made notes so that I could keep on track because self-care is one of those really huge topics. I made a list of 5 things in terms of paying attention to the self care. And the number one is understanding what self care actually is. It's not a particular act, it's not a particular behavior. It is what you get from those. And I love that definition that Cass gave with the rejuvenation and the relaxation. What are the things that do that for you? And that would be your definition of what self care is.
You hit it right on the nose there, the for you. One of the things that I really like to do with my clients is build a self-care list. So write out all the things. You can start Googling it online. There's all kinds of lists. I have one on catastrophe I can link to. I think it has like 50 or more things that you can do. But going through and picking out those ones that are personal, that work for you. And then I also like to come at it from the other side and look at what are the stressors in your life. What are the things that really make you feel that stress? And then I take both lists and we cross-reference them. So when I feel this stress, I can relieve some of that pressure by doing this activity.
Yeah.
And so knowing ahead of time, because once you're overwhelmed, once you're in that place where, hey, it's been too long, I haven't done anything for self-care, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, figuring that stuff out then is just another point of overwhelm. But if you have pre-prepared for you, that you've done the work and it's specific to you, it might be spend some time with my pet lizard. That's a really specific thing. But if you know that just having that downtime, stepping away and spending that time with a cherished pet, that's going to work. Do that. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And what I thought of as well, one of the areas that makes us overthink self-care and feel like we have to do these huge things is that we don't necessarily recognize all the different areas in our lives that we can implement smaller aspects of self-care. And quite often we think that we need a big thing to cover every aspect of who we are. And that creates that pressure almost to go big or go home kind of feeling. And that doesn't work with self-care. With self-care, you want to focus and zero in on what works for this kind of situation. And so what I normally do is because self-care is a huge thing for me, meaning that I struggled with it for a long time, and I'm now coming into a really full understanding of how to do it effectively and not overwhelm myself and feel stressed about the self-care. I work with the wheel of life, and it's something that I work with my clients as well. We always begin with the wheel of life, and for those of you who don't know, you can just Google it because it's all over. It's one of those tools where you look at the different facets of your life and what's happening in each facet, and there are different versions. The one I like has 10 sections, and those 10 sections include spirituality, growth and learning, fun and recreation, partner and love, family and friends, health and fitness, money and finance, physical environment, community, and career and work. So there are 10 areas, and pretty much what I do on a weekly basis is that I decide one little thing that I can do in each of those areas that would bring me joy during the time. And so it doesn't have to be huge. But I, like you said, Cass, decide ahead of time. So it's not while I'm overwhelmed and distressed, I try to figure it out. Ahead of time, I have to plan ahead and I have to think about this. Otherwise, the week will pass and I would get hyperfixated on one thing, and then the rest of me does not get the care and love to, cover my entire being. And so I can tell myself, but I went to do this thing and I had fun. Why am I still so overwhelmed and stressed? Well, that only covers fun and recreation. What about your health and fitness? What about your physical environment? What about community? These are all areas that could increase anxiety and distress. So I actually had to write it down separately and take a look at each area separately so that I could be more aware of what's happening in each of these areas in my life.
I
Yeah.
want to jump in here because I want to say that I think that's really wonderful, and it's something that I also strive to do, is to hit those areas of different places of self care. But made simple, self care made simple, for somebody who's listening who may not already have these things implemented. It's okay to start small. In fact, it's
Oh,
encouraged to
absolutely.
start small, right? Take one aspect of your life, and for a week, find a daily place that you can enter
Hmm.
into that piece of self care, and see how it looks at the end of the week. And are you ready to add another one? And then how long until you can add another one, right? You're
Yeah.
building up your resiliency with self-care. It doesn't have to start at the 10
Mm. But
aspects
for
of your
me,
life.
once you know the 10, then you can decide, hey, I'm going to deal with health and fitness this week, or I'm going to deal with this, maybe money and finance this week. And even in those
Absolutely.
areas, starting as small as, like, for example, growth and learning. I'm an educator and I I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm always interested in doing a program or a course or something. But sometimes that is a bit overwhelming. So I can't enroll in a course right now. So what would I do for self-care? Maybe read an article online, read a blog, maybe just find a blog that I'm interested in and park it so I could read later. So the aspect of dealing with the self-care, it doesn't necessarily mean doing something even reasonably big. It could be as simple as opening your laptop and listening to your favorite song, and that would come under fun and recreation. We don't have to go anywhere or do anything. And so, recognizing for me, the two big things in my journey were to recognize that there are other aspects of me that need love. And in any aspect and in every aspect, the smallest thing that I can do is enough to
Do
be
something that isn't
self-care.
nothing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I was just
Do
going to
something
mention
that
that,
isn't
Cass. You need
nothing.
to talk about that. You need to talk about that because I love that phrase. Absolutely.
Yeah.
uh yeah,
Yeah.
I posted this on my in my group, mindfulness, meditation, motivation, momentum, meetups, and more. I like alliteration a little bit. And it's just a little idea that people can't do the self care for you. You have to do it for yourself. But it can be anything that moves you forward, anything that
Mhm.
relaxes you, rests you, and the idea is that it's anything that isn't nothing. So something that you're doing
Yeah.
is enough to be something.
Yeah, I hear a lot of action words there from both of you as you had that back and forth, and they're key action words. I think that's really interesting. That rest and relaxation, self care, is actually action. It's doing,
Mhm.
and it's doing something that isn't nothing. I mean, there's involvement there. So we need to set boundaries. We need to know where the line is for the other things we're doing, that when we reach that point, if it's stress, if it's you know just activity, just that we're so involved, so focused, over focused, we need to have those boundaries that say, wait a minute, step back and act now on the self-care.
Yeah.
And then we set priorities for that self-care. We set certain things that we're going to do, the not nothing part of it, and those become important priorities in everything that we're doing. And it's across the board in all of these things. And it gets us to the point of really having a life balance, I suppose. And generally, so many of us don't have life balance, often by choice. I mean, who wants a boring life balance? And so we want to be, outreaching. We want to be doing more, and we overwhelm ourselves. Overwhelm isn't
Hmm.
necessarily something that
Hmm.
comes from the outside. We can tend to overwhelm ourselves. So we have to find those edges that tell us we're here, we're on the edge, it's thin ice, we're at our limits, and now one step back, refocus, redirect, and do.
You cannot
Yeah,
pour from an
absolutely.
empty
And
cup.
oh, yes, yes. And I was thinking as well, sometimes when we are at that stage where we know we need to do something and we understand that it could be simple, but we're still just feeling completely lost about what that simple thing can be. My go-to is gratitude and writing down the gratitude. So it's not just saying it. We actually physically write it down. And sometimes it could be even taken a step further where you can um, send a note to someone. So we're expressing the gratitude, which is the saying it loud part of the gratitude strategy for me. So sometimes it could be saying it right, where you writing it down for yourself. Sometimes it could just be the saying it loud part, where you might call someone and say, "Hey, I'm grateful for this," or you get an opportunity to tell someone thank you for something that they've done, just to make it tangible and physical. And if you don't know where to start with self-care, that is, for me, the easiest go-to place to begin, beginning with gratitude.
Um, Something that I often hear from clients or people that I'm talking with about self care is the idea that self care is selfish or self indulgent. And it
Mm,
is the exact opposite. So, self care is about being able to effectively take care of yourself so that you can help others or you can be around to what's the reciprocity is the word that I'm looking for. We live in a lot of
yeah.
reciprocal relationships in our life, and if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we're not able to meet up to the standard that we've set for ourselves of being able to be reciprocal with friends and family and coworkers and etc.
That's
Yeah.
exactly where I started with the oxygen mask. It is so necessary to take care of ourselves so that we can then deal with the others. And one of the things that I think is important there is recognizing that it's not a bad thing to seek support, to reach out to someone else. Cass outlined a process that she uses with her own clients, and you don't get that process if you're not one of her clients. So sometimes you would need to reach out to a coach, reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member to get the immediate help that you need. And I think that
Mhm.
Shelly Ann was referring to the urgency or the immediacy of this sometimes. And so it doesn't fall upon us. It's self-care, but it doesn't fall upon us to handle the burden of all of it. If we need help, ask, and don't be embarrassed or afraid or somehow feeling that it makes you a less to ask. And when you have, one of the things that you'll find is when you have a coach or a mentor of your own, and that goes for coaches too. And when you're in regular contact and you're discussing, on a regular basis, just general things that may not be to a particular end. It's just open discussion. We talk about open conversations here. But when you're in those open discussions, there's a lot of the made simple part of self care that manifests itself because you are in that process. And so suddenly you feel better, you feel relaxed, you are experiencing joy at the things that you're sharing. You're expressing gratitude for things that have happened, and you're sharing them with each other. Conversation, contact, camaraderie,
Mhm.
all lends itself to self-care. It's so simple. Take a break, you know, invite a friend in and sit down for a cup of coffee. And that's all it has to be. And the conversation will take care of the rest of it. It is
Yeah.
amazing how we work. Now, there are structures and there are
Yeah.
things we can do. But for part of it, just to get the initial engagement going works wonders.
Yeah. And I think that um, comfort with recognizing all of these, all the actions that create this kind of value begins with what Cass began with, understanding that self care is a range of things. It's not only doing this or it's not only doing that. Once we can recognize that there's a range of things that we can do that fall under self care, then we would also recognize one, how simple it is, and two, that it's not selfish. Because, for example, drinking enough water in a day, that's part of self-care under the physical aspect of it, health and wellness. Um, would anybody consider it selfish to drink water on a regular basis? Not likely. So once we understand all that can come under and really falls under self-care, we would realize how much of a variety we have to choose from, and we don't necessarily have to feel that we only do things in this area. So for those who are concerned about doing the things that feel selfish, they can start with things that don't feel selfish, which also come under self care, but then that's going to build momentum and get you healthier and healthier in all the different aspects that you decide to tackle, and then eventually you would move on from there into the wider range. So begin where you can. And I absolutely love that phrase, just do something that's not nothing, because begin where you can. If your concept of self-care and doing lots of the things that we might consider um necessary still feels selfish for you, drink more water, you know, take a stretch in the morning, do something. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the examples. I think some of them come from like depression and anxiety mindset, where if you can't do much more than get out of bed, at least get up and change into your into a clean set of pajamas. Go back to bed. That's fine. Don't stress yourself out more. Just do something that isn't nothing. If you can't make a whole sandwich, that's fine. Take the pieces of a sandwich and eat them separately. Just nourish your body. And I think that's one of
Hmm.
those big words there, is nourishment. That self-care can be relaxing, it can be calming. It can be something that's intellectual or spiritual. It can be something that's practical. You can do the dishes, and that can be self care, because not
Yeah.
only are you taking care of a task, you're crossing it off your list, you're also preparing for future you who needs dishes to use, right? So self care is sort of all encompassing if you really
Yeah.
look at it.
I think so. I think anything that supports you as a human being, and we are multifaceted. So anything that supports you and nourishes you, as you said, and anything that makes you feel relaxed and energized, all of that is considered self-care. And so, for me, reading is self-care. Um, Watching a movie is self-care. There are lots of things that, come under the self-care. So stretching, taking a stretch after each class, because I'm sitting, I do online work, so a class is like an hour and a half at least on a stretch. So maybe scheduling breaks in between that to stretch my legs, get a drink of water and those kinds of things. That's self-care. And so it's part of my routine, and it feels like, something that I should do if I want to be the best instructor that I can be, and that's self-care. And so I feel like really the beginning of everything is stepping back a moment and truly understanding how wide a range of activities we get when we think of what self-care actually is. That is most definitely the place to begin.
Something I like to bring up is fork theory. I think I've talked about this before in our sessions, but I'm not
We,
exactly sure.
there's a couple of things that happen
Oh,
here.
Oh, there seems to be a lag on the the feed this morning.
yeah, I'm not sure if I should keep going. I'm going to keep
Yeah, you
going.
can go ahead. I
Um,
think I think Steve has paused.
so the idea of fork theory is, well, there's spoon theory, which is about the energy that you have to do things in your life, and how, and it comes from disability communities where they have fewer amounts of spoons. Fork theory, on the other side, is the stressors that are in your life. It comes from the idea of put a fork in me, I'm done, kind of thing. So you can have big, huge forks in you. You can have medium forks. You can have tiny forks, and they can be anything from like, uh, you have a bill coming due, but you don't have enough money to pay for it, so you're really stressing about it, or you have to take the dog to the groomer, or you need to go to the washroom. Like there's that whole range again, from small to huge. And while you may not be able to do anything about the big forks, you can usually do something about the small forks. And so just going to relieve yourself in the washroom is going to make you feel less stressed, even if you're in the middle of a conversation about that bill that you need to pay. You can say, wait, I need to pause. I'm stressed out about this. Go to the washroom, relieve that fork, and come back a little bit more refreshed to face the bigger issues that may take more than one conversation or more than one action. So
Mhm.
I think that fork theory is a really good way to talk about self-care, and the idea that each of those things that you're pulling a fork out, you're dealing with something that's taking care of yourself and your life and your process.
Yeah, we have a comment. I think it came in early in the discussion, but it speaks to what you were just talking about there. The person says, "I love the idea that self-care can be manageable, and I feel like it's many times we feel like self-care is something extra that we have to add to our daily routines. And so it doesn't often feel like self-care because it's something else that I have to do. So yeah, I have to pay the bills, I have to deal with the kids, and oh yeah, I need to self-care too, right? So sometimes it feels like another one of those things that we browbeat each other with. Oh, you need to self-care. You need to take care of yourself. And it gets to be that little extra overwhelm when the whole idea of self-care is to reduce the overwhelm.
Yeah,
And so I like the way you describe that, Cass. Yeah, Steve, you can go ahead.
I don't know if the video is breaking up for others or just for me, but I'm seeing, yeah, seeing a little bit of breakup going on in some of the conversation. Um, Tech is always an issue. Um, One of the things again as coaches, we can model self care. We can project by what we're doing ourselves. We can lead by example, I think is the term I'm grasping for there. Um, and it's not a hard thing to do. That what we've just discussed here today in some detail is the idea that it's little things, little bits and pieces, and we can choose to do a few of those. And because of that, we can incorporate it in our everyday routine with ease. And so when we know that as coaches and we can deliver on that, we can be a beacon, an example, and a magnet for those who are struggling with self care. Because even though it is little things, you've talked about a couple of things, bills that you don't have the cash for right now, and so you stress out over that. And the stress isn't going to pay the bill. We know that. What the heck? Why are you stressing? It's not going to fix it, but we stress anyway. So when we understand that perspective, then it is almost I don't want to say obligation, but a responsibility, I think is a good word for there, that we embody what we are selling, what we're talking about, what we're
Hmm.
delivering, simply by doing. And that comes back to the action again, is that if we do those little things that are not nothing, they add up to very important aspects. We can cover the spectrum of self care as it affects so many things, and then other people will see that happening. And I know from my association with both of you that the three of us do that, and we share with each other many times about our stressors and about our solutions, and we get advice from each other on additional solutions that we haven't thought of. And one of the things I wrote about recently was the difference between mastermind and uh, a webinar, a study session, and or a teaching, a training. And sometimes it frustrates me a little bit that people don't learn their craft and they pick up on buzzwords that they bring into their presentations. And for a while, there were a lot of people offering masterminds. Join this mastermind where we have, expert Don Rickles who's going to come and teach you on the process. Well, that's not a mastermind. As soon as you bring in the word teach and a person is going to be there as a presenter, it's no longer a mastermind. Learn what a mastermind is. And we create frustrations for ourselves by not dealing, not learning our craft. And the whole area of self care can be disrupted so easily as we struggle to make things happen that don't seem to be going our way. And if we stop and look at it, we realize that we're the ones that are putting the twists in place that are making us struggle and giving us the frustration and having us experience the negativity when in fact it's just an easy process again to do those little things.
Yeah, and I think this
I
is
go ahead.
sorry, I think this is one of the um I guess the benefits or the strategies. I'll get the word eventually. When it comes to self-care, the fact that because it's self care, we get to decide and we get to act on it. So we're not waiting on someone else to do something. We're not waiting on something to fall into place. We're not waiting on something in the future. We get to do self care now on our terms, the way we need to be refreshed and rejuvenated. So we get to act on it right now how we choose. And because of that, self care isn't only just merely manageable, it is within our realm of influence. Regardless of how influential we think we are, whatever level, self care falls into that influence because we get to do it and we get to choose.
Yeah, it's about making it accessible for yourself, right?
Yeah.
The quintessential self care is go home, take a bath, put on this, the scented candles or
Yeah.
a bath bomb, right? Treat yourself. What happens if you live in an apartment and you have a shower stall? You're not going home to take a bath. You're going home to feel bad that you can't take a bath, right? Whereas for me, my one of the things that I like to do, a hobby of mine, is crocheting. And so it's just a task that I find relieves me of stress. I can either focus on nothing while I'm crocheting, or I can listen to a podcast depending on my mood. Something that's fun to do is a random act of crocheting kindness. So I think we're all familiar with random acts of kindness. You can do, put a nice note under somebody's uh, windshield wiper on their car that just says, like, hey, I hope you have a great day. That's just a little random act. You could pay it forward by buying the people in the drive through behind you buy their coffee for them. Oftentimes that creates a whole chain where people will continue to buy the coffee for the person behind them. um, One of the things I like to do is to crochet little things and leave a little note with it, and then leave them in public spaces like the library or something. And it'll just say something like, I'm not lost, I'm just alone. If I made you smile, please take me home. Um, and I find that to be self care, to know that I did an activity that I enjoyed. And then I also got to bring a smile to somebody else's face.
Mhm.
And I really, that makes me feel rejuvenated. That fills my cup. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. It's little things. I got up one morning and went out in the winter time. It's a couple of years ago now, but I was just thinking, oh, it snowed last night. I've got to go out and shovel the walk. It's cold. It's dreary, and I was just, I opened the door. I put on my coat, put a scarf around my neck, opened the door. My sidewalk was shoveled. I have no idea to this day who the heck shoveled my sidewalk, but they shoveled the street, across the front of my property, the sidewalk, and then up to my door, and the steps were clear. And it was, a fairly decent snowfall, 5 or 6 inches. It meant it had to be shoveled. And I looked, and the sidewalks on both sides of my house were not shoveled yet. And much younger people lived in both of those houses and perfectly capable of shoveling their walks. So I don't think they came over and shoveled mine and didn't do their own. So who the heck did it? Who stopped their car, got out with a shovel, and came over and shoveled my sidewalk? Did they even know that it's me that lives there and they did it for me? Or did they randomly pick a house and shovel a walk and it happened to really be an amazing thing? My spirit was boosted and everything was great that day and the next day, and I could do so much for other people. Wow, little thing, but it meant
Yeah.
so much. And the surprise of it, finding something, little cute thing in the library like that, it's the surprise of it that puts the smile on your face and just makes you feel good. Talk about applied gratitude. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's amazing.
It's that tangible, and sometimes it could be as Simple as, you see someone in a t-shirt that you like and you tell them, that's a really awesome t-shirt. I think it's great.
Mhm.
Just that sentence and people think, ah, I like it too. I'm glad somebody else noticed. Right?
Yeah.
So it could be as simple
Yeah.
as that.
We all sort of looked up self care a bit this morning, I'm sure, and we already have practices that we do. They say that self care benefits your physical, your mental, and your emotional health. It can promote more positive health outcomes. So if you're already dealing with something like any health outcome, I can't think of an example right now, but you're doing self care as well, then it will make that better. It can also build resiliency. It can help you live longer. It can help you be better able to manage stress, like your job and other responsibilities. Just thought that, that little plug in there that whatever you're doing, self care will make better.
Mhm.
Yeah, because what self-care does, I mean, just looking at the words self-care, you are telling yourself that you care. And it's awesome when someone else tells you that you care, but when your own inner voice says, I love you and I care about you, so I'm going to be doing this particular thing to make you feel better, to make you feel refreshed, to give you more energy, to support you in any particular way. That's the inner voice that you hear the most. And that's the inner voice that sometimes is quite often a real a-hole critic. It can be. So when that voice says something nice and something beautiful to the point where you act on it physically, that is like an internal hug. And so that's how it really impacts on us, because we are reminding our subconscious selves that I like you, and we're good by doing these little things to help ourselves. So it's the same way, we're in love, we love someone else, we do something nice for them because we want to see them smile and feel good about themselves. Well, self-care, self-love, self-compassion, they all work hand in hand because they focus that beautiful attention to self. And it's like taking care of a plant, we're mulching, we're watering, we're doing all the things that support growth and development.
It's amazing to me how self-care is a double-edged sword. It
Hmm.
gives us both sides of it. We take care of ourselves, which infiltrates into all the things that we're doing, as Cass suggested, that everything we do is better because of self-care. And therefore we do a better job to those that we work with, that we live
Hmm.
with, that we associate with, and that makes them feel better. And so it becomes, our self-care becomes a part of their self-care, and they can then be encouraged to do more for themselves, and as a result they can do more for the people that they work with, that they associate
Yeah.
with, and it expands, but it also comes back full circle.
Yep.
Love is something, if you give it away, you end up having more, is what you just made me think of. Self care is
Yep.
something, if
Yeah.
you do it for yourself, you end up having more for everybody and yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was thinking of, being in a pond where it's not open ocean, where it goes indefinitely. It's in a pond. So when the ripples go out, they hit the sides and they kind of come back in, and then more ripples go out. And so there's this constant motion and flow of love and self-care when you get started, which is why we're going back to that statement, which is why that is so profound. Just do something other than nothing, because that ripple is going to go out and then it's going to come back. And then you'd have that more energy to send another ripple out that's going to come back. And that cycle is worth beginning, definitely worth beginning in your life.
Yeah, we cover this, or we say this, one of us, every week, and it's so true. I think that's why we do it. But I had the opportunity yesterday, the privilege yesterday, as I began working on the website that I talked about at the beginning of this episode, and I was gathering together all of our previous episodes and setting them up on a page on the website where they could be found. And it gave me the opportunity to go over each one of them again, just the titles, but to actually see the titles of what we'd covered. And here we are once again, which it seems to happen every time. Self care affects every one of those previous, whatever it is, 25 or so sessions, episodes that we've done. Every single one of them, and I literally, digitally touched every one of them as I copied them from YouTube, where they're all positioned, and put them on the website on a page, and saw each of the titles. And I realize this morning, here we are talking about self care, and there isn't one of them that I can think of there that self care doesn't actually impact. And it becomes easier for us. And if we're coaches and we're teaching others, it becomes easier for us to teach. And if other people are then learning from us, taking in from us, self care makes it easier for them. And all of those different topics that might be in that engagement are simply made not only easier, but more understandable, more impactful. The, the effect on our lives and the lives of others is immensely powerful when you consider what self care not only can do but does.
Yeah. I believe that there are certain what we call keystone habits that form the foundation of bringing us to that place where we can engage in other habits. And gratitude is one, and gratitude is a big part of self care. So when you look at self care, it really is that keystone habit that helps you with other things. Because when you look at the different facets of yourself and you care for yourself, you make sure that, as Cass said, the cup isn't empty, and not only is the cup not empty, we love what's in the cup as well. It's not just something random that happens to be in the cup. And when we say we share from an empty, we can't share from an empty cup. We get so energized with what's in the cup that we feel almost obligated to share because it's so beautiful and we love it. So I think understanding
Abundance.
that there are certain things that you can do, and you don't have to start big. Really tiny, small habit. Get started with something that isn't nothing, and you are tackling a keystone habit that is going to get you where you want to be.
I
It's like it
was
has. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I quite often see a meme around these days. It seems to have picked up again, but it was literally years ago, decades ago, that a mentor shared this with me. You've heard the phrase, "Is the cup half full or is it half empty?" People, have different approaches to what that means in terms of attitude. But the thing to understand is the cup is refillable. And
Mhm.
so that's the point that self care applies to. We can refill our cup. It doesn't matter if our cup runneth over. It doesn't matter if our cup is half full or half empty. It doesn't matter even if our cup has been drained, if we've given it all away. If we truly understand self care, it is refillable.
And with delicious
And
stuff.
Mm.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because if you fill your cup with vengeance and malice and revenge and all these things, that's what you're going to pour onto other people. But if you fill your cup with that self care and that kindness and love, and that's also what you're going to spill out onto other people when your
Yeah.
cup runneth over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I always marvel at that the analogy with the cup because like you, Steve, we talk about there's this huge conversation about whether the cup is full or empty, half full, half empty. And I remember seeing a meme years ago as well that said, what in the cup was delicious. That's what I came to that idea because, while everybody is trying to figure out, is it half full? Is it half empty? Somebody came along and drank what's in the cup because it had stuff in the cup, right? So how do we use what's in the cup? That's the thing, because it's really all about action and momentum. And as you pointed out quite early on in the conversation, Steve, the point about self-care is that we have to act on it. This is not something that we're just visualizing in order for it to feel like self-care to us because we are multifaceted. Self-care also has to fit within for us for it to impact on us in that way.
I think they've actually done research on that. I'm not trying to contradict you because I do think the action is really important, but I think they've actually done research that shows if you just think about the act of going and making a tea and all the process of it and sitting down and reading a book, that you will actually calm and like
Mhm.
receive benefit from that visualization. So
Yeah,
if that's all you can do, if you are, too beyond your limit, all you can do is sit in your chair and visualize the action of yourself doing that self-care thing. Do it. That's something that isn't nothing.
exactly. I wanted to say that.
But that
Because I
is,
love it.
yeah, but that is an action.
That's the
Visualization
thing.
is taking action. That's the wonder of it. And yes, there's research on that. Um,
Yeah, there's a ton of research actually, which
the whole
includes
it
other
started,
things too.
yeah, it started in sports, and one
Hmm.
coach got his team to come out and sit in the gym, in the sports area, and instead of running around, it was basketball actually, instead of running around and taking shots and getting that experience and that exercise and that repetitiveness of doing, so that when the game came they could do, to their immense surprise, he brought out a bunch of easy chairs into the floor and had them all sit down, all these team members sitting in these big easy chairs, probably ones that tilted back and stretched out. And he had them close their eyes. And for the whole training session, he had them visualize making those baskets, making 3 pointers, making, rim shots, making, these different types and styles of shot. Visualize and being successful every time. Don't ever think about missing. Think about nailing it.
Hmm.
And on the nose, as you said, it get it every time. And they did that, and they really initially they thought this is the players all thought this is crazy. We're gonna lose. We're gonna be wiped out. Well, he had them do exercise for physical stamina, running circuits and all the things, push-ups and things that they do. But when it came to the practicing, they visualized, and they went on to the championships that year. And they had been a team that had really struggled year after year, but the coach
Yeah.
was desperate to find something else. And that self-care, that practice, visually was as powerful as what we would call the doing. And what's recognized now is that mental occurrences
Hmm.
tying in, what we call manifesting, is doing. and it is so powerful.
Yeah, and there are actually several other researchers that deal with that because the one I read was on athletes with who were runners, and they hooked them up to the machines and whatnot, and they found that their synapses fired in the same way when they were running as when they were visualizing the running and not actually physically running. And what the visualization is not just simply thinking about it. It was sort of mentally experiencing it through an imagination of the senses. So when we say visualization, we're not just thinking about a sort of passive thought, oh, I'm throwing a basket and I scored. It's more of, what does the ball feel like in my hand as I release it? And, when I jump, how does that feel? And so it's a more involved sort of um I guess experiential thought in your mind about the practice and the activity. And so it's not, I believe, yes, that's an act. And if you can do nothing else, that is something other than nothing that gets you to eventually being able to take the shot, being able to do the running, because you're also doing other things. And it's a gradual process of becoming and doing, and then taking that mental idea into the physical, because we're also physical beings. So if you stay only thinking about it, then there's so much that can get done. But the physical has to also come into play, because as part of who we are, human beings in this physical world, that the physical would come into play as well. So I see it as part of the process. I really, really do.
Part of the
Yeah.
process.
Well,
On
we're
that note, we'll wrap it up. Cass, can you? Did you have something to add to that, or do you want to share?
No, I was just going to say it's time to wrap it up, and maybe interconnectedness might be a good
Mm.
topic. Is that something that we want to focus on, or is that not
I'll have to think
topic
about it.
enough?
It's going to be huge, whatever it is, because by the time we get to it, but I'll have to
Yeah,
think about it in terms of what angle I would like to take it from, but why not?
yeah.
Interconnectedness.
We,
Next week.
we've
Yeah.
just covered a whole range of things that are interconnected. So to explore
Hmm.
that makes sense. I love it. You've done it again, Cass. Thank you, everybody. This has been a. Where did it go? Where did the time go? Once again, we've covered the topic and shared, and I hope people are getting some benefit from it. Both those who have stayed with us and watched through it live, and now those who are watching it in our replay. Thank you, everybody. The group, the panel here, and those who are watching. And we're talking about filling the other space and bringing in a guest. Perhaps next week we'll have somebody for you to meet, and we'll move on from there. Let's play the music and get out of here.
Bye, everybody.